For centuries, royal titles have carried prestige, responsibility, and tradition. But among the many noble titles passed through Britain's monarchy, few have developed a reputation quite like that of the Duke of York. Ostensibly a position of honor, granted usually to the monarch's second son, it has become, over time, something of a whispered curse, one that leaves scandal, misfortune, and controversy in its wake. The notion of a cursed title might sound dramatic, even absurd, but history has a peculiar way of lending weight to such ideas. Because when you examine the long list of Dukes of York throughout British history, a troubling pattern begins to emerge. Again and again, the men who bore this title have found themselves dethroned, disgraced, or driven into infamy. Coincidence? Perhaps. But the consistency with which this particular role ends in disaster is difficult to ignore. The story begins in the 15th century with Richard of York, a key figure in the Wars of the Roses. His ambitions to place his family on the throne ultimately led to his death in battle. Though his son eventually became King Edward IV, Richard himself was killed at Wakefield in 1460, his head displayed on a pike by Lancastrian forces. His legacy was blood-soaked and tragic, a beginning that cast a long shadow over the title. Centuries later, James Stuart became Duke of York. The younger brother of King Charles II, James converted to Catholicism, an act that alienated much of Protestant England and eventually led to national crisis. Though he became King James II in 1685, his reign was short-lived. In 1688, the Glorious Revolution forced him into exile, replaced by his daughter Mary and her husband William of Orange. For all his royal blood and legitimate claim, James lost everything, and once again, the title of Duke of York became associated with downfall. The next notable figure to inherit the title was Prince Frederick, second son of King George III. Though less infamous than his predecessors, Frederick lived a life marked by personal disappointment. He died young, never achieving the distinction of his older brother, George IV. By this point, the title seemed to carry with it not glory, but quiet frustration and personal failure. Then came Prince Albert, perhaps the most famous Duke of York prior to modern times. As the second son of King George V, Albert was never meant to be king. Shy, soft-spoken, and afflicted with a severe stammer, he lived much of his life in the shadow of his older brother, Edward VIII. But in 1936, the monarchy was shaken when Edward abdicated the throne to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee. Suddenly, Albert, reluctant, anxious, and underprepared, was forced to assume the crown as King George VI. The weight of the nation fell on his shoulders, and with the onset of World War II, he led Britain through one of its darkest hours. Though his reign is now remembered with respect and admiration, his personal life was marked by immense pressure, health struggles, and an early death at the age of 56. He never wanted the throne. The title of Duke of York had brought him closer to it than he ever intended, and it ultimately cost him dearly. But no story exemplifies the so-called curse more fully than that of Prince Andrew, the current and likely final holder of the Duke of York title. Born in 1960 as the second son of Queen Elizabeth II, Andrew was once seen as a charismatic figure in the royal family. He served in the Royal Navy during the Falklands War. And was known for his bachelor lifestyle, good looks, and energetic public presence. In 1986, he married Sarah Ferguson.
And there in the bottom right-hand corner is William, with my niece Laura. Laura looking as though she's taking the bow.
And the couple became tabloid favorites. But by the early 1990s, cracks began to form. Their marriage became strained, with rumors of infidelity and scandalous photographs dominating the media. In 1996, they divorced, though they remained close friends. But Andrew's troubles were only just beginning. Over the years, questions began to surface about his business dealings, friendships with controversial figures, and lavish lifestyle. Everything came to a head in the 2010s, when his close association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein drew international scrutiny. Accusations were made, lawsuits were filed. In a disastrous 2019 BBC interview, Andrew attempted to defend himself.
Do you remember meeting Virginia Roberts at all? Yes, I did.
Do you know you didn't meet her, or do you just not remember meeting her?
No, I have.
There is an active FBI investigation out for a legal statement from you. Would you be willing to provide that?
But only made matters worse. His responses were evasive, poorly received, and at times bizarre. When questioned about his alleged inability to sweat or his whereabouts on the night in question, the interview became infamous. Public opinion turned swiftly against him. In early 2022, amid mounting legal pressure and irreparable reputational damage, Prince Andrew settled a lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre, a woman who accused him of sexual abuse when she was a minor. Though he did not admit guilt, the settlement, reportedly amounting to several million pounds, was widely interpreted as a silent admission of liability. The fallout was swift. Queen Elizabeth stripped him of his military titles and royal patronages. He was effectively removed from public life, barred from appearing on the royal balcony during major events, and cut off from active duties. It is perhaps no surprise, then, that King Charles III has not reassigned the title of Duke of York to anyone else. Traditionally, the title would be passed to the monarch's second son. In this case, that would be Prince Harry. But given Harry's own complicated exit from royal duties, ongoing estrangement via the family, and public the idea of offering him the title is... And so the question arises, why does this keep happening? Why has the Duke of York title become such a magnet for misfortune? Some historians argue that it's nothing more than coincidence. After all, being a second son in a monarchy places an individual in a peculiar position, close enough to the throne to feel its pull, but not close enough to inherit it. This often breeds frustration, a search for purpose, or a desire to rebel. Without the clear path of an heir, second sons have historically taken riskier routes, whether through military service, political ambition, or at times personal excess. The title of Duke of York may not be cursed in a supernatural sense, but perhaps it carries the weight of this historic tension. Others believe that the title itself has become a symbol of national unease. With every successive duke embroiled in controversy or crushed by expectation, the public has come to associate it with failure. It's a name that arrives with bad press already built in. Once the pattern is established, it becomes self-fulfilling. Whatever the explanation, the evidence is difficult to deny. Time and again, the title has marked the lives of its holders with turmoil. Whether on the battlefield, in exile, at war, or in scandal, the Dukes of York have walked a path far rockier than their royal counterparts. Today, the British monarchy faces a new era of transition. King Charles reigns after decades of waiting.
Yeah, okay. Let's try that again. It's quite small cash. On the day, it's not going to go in, is it? So that works.
We haven't got sausage fingers left, no.
No, well, I hope I get it.
Prince William is stepping into a more visible, commanding role. And Prince George, the heir after him, is growing up under the public eye.
And got his hands dirty with a bit of light construction. One of the purposes of the event was to help the Scout group improve the outdoor space around the Scout hut.
But the future of the Duke of York title remains in limbo, perhaps permanently. Perhaps this is the royal family's quiet acknowledgement that the title has outlived its time. Perhaps retiring it is an attempt to break the pattern, to draw a line under a history of disgrace, and allow the next generation to step forward unburdened by the past. Or perhaps, deep within the palace walls, even they fear the legacy of a name that has, again and again, brought only downfall.